My ex-husband cheated on me with a colleague and got her pregnant, eventually leaving me and ending our 15 years of relationship. And now he wants me to take his new daughter on vacation because my daughter and I are going to a Europe trip for the summer and he cannot afford to pay for it. So I did this, and now he refuses to see me or my daughter. Hello everyone. I think I might have ruined my daughter's relationship with her father. Now before you judge me, read the story and tell me if I am in the wrong. I, Lily, 47 female, got divorced 11 years ago from my ex-husband Philip, 52 male. I remember the day I met Philip like it was yesterday. It was a sunny afternoon in May, and I was browsing through books at a local bookstore. As I reached for a novel on the top shelf, my hand accidentally brushed against another, and when I looked up, I found myself locking eyes with Philip. His warm smile and kind eyes instantly drew me in, and we struck up a conversation about our favorite authors. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We spent countless hours talking about everything under the sun, from our dreams and aspirations to our deepest fears and insecurities. It felt like we had known each other for years, even though we had just met. As our relationship blossomed, we knew that we were meant to be together. We shared the same values, beliefs, and goals in life. Despite our age difference, me being 21 and him being 26, we felt like we were on the same wavelength. After just a year of dating, Philip proposed to me on a romantic getaway to the countryside. Overwhelmed with the love and excitement, I said yes without a second thought. Looking back now, I realized that we may have rushed into things too quickly, but at that moment, all I could think about was spending the rest of my life with that man that I loved. Our wedding day was a whirlwind of emotions and celebrations. Surrounded by our family and friends, we exchanged vows and promised to love and cherish each other for eternity. It was the happiest day of my life, and I couldn't wait to start this new chapter with Phil by my side. However, as the years went by, cracks began to appear in our relationship. What once felt like a fairy tale romance slowly started to unravel as we struggled to navigate the challenges of marriage and adulthood. We both had our dreams and aspirations, and sometimes they clashed with each other. Our marriage had its fair share of bumps in the road, just like any other couples. Communication was one of our biggest challenges. We would argue over the smallest things, from whose turn it was to do the dishes, to bigger stuff like our future plans. I kept suggesting couples therapy, thinking it could help us get back on track. But Philip wasn't keen on the idea. He brushed it off, saying we could work things out on our own. I held on to hope, believing we could overcome our issues if we just tried a little harder. Despite the disagreements and tension, I still loved him deeply and wanted to make things right. I poured my heart into trying to improve our relationship, but it seemed like Philip had already checked out. Then one day, he dropped a bombshell on me. He confessed that he was leaving because he had fallen in love with another woman. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, shock, betrayal, heartbreak, all swirling around inside me. It was like everything I had hoped for, everything I had worked towards, came crashing down in an instant. I felt blindsided and utterly shattered. How could he just walk away from everything we had built together, from the promises we made on our wedding day? I tried to reason with him, to understand why he was throwing it all away for someone else. But his explanations felt hollow, like he had already made up his mind and there was nothing I could do to change it. It was as if our years together meant nothing to him anymore. I remember those times when I felt a twinge of doubt about Philip's relationship with Jennifer. She worked with him, and they seemed to spend a lot of time together. It wasn't just one instance that made me suspicious. It was a series of small moments that added up over time. One time, Philip came home from work and couldn't stop talking about Jennifer. He'd tell me about how they had lunch together or how they collaborated on a project. At first, I brushed it off as a harmless work chatter, but as time went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more between them. Then there were the late nights at the office. Philip would often come home well past dinner time, claiming he had to finish up some last-minute tasks. I tried to be understanding, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was spending more time with Jennifer than he was letting on. I even tried to broach the subject with Philip once or twice, expressing my concerns about their relationship, but he would always dismiss my worries, telling me that I was being paranoid or jealous. He would say things like, "Jennifer's just a colleague," or "You're reading too much into it," and every time he brushed off my concerns, it only made me more suspicious. Looking back, I realize now that I should have trusted my instincts more. Call it a woman's intuition or whatever you want, but I had a gut feeling that there was something off about their relationship. But I pushed those thoughts aside, hoping that I was just being paranoid. So when Philip finally admitted that he was leaving me for Jennifer, all those doubts I had been harboring for so long were confirmed. It was a painful realization, knowing that my suspicions had been right all along. But it also made me question everything about our marriage and the trust we had built over the years. When Philip dropped the bombshell that he was leaving me for Jennifer, I was stunned. My mind was racing, trying to process what he was saying. I couldn't believe that the man that I loved, the man that I had spent over a decade of my life with, could just walk away like that. In a moment of desperation, I found myself begging him to stay. I pleaded with him to reconsider, to give our marriage another chance. Looking back, I'm not proud of how I acted. I was desperate, grasping at straws to hold on to the life I had known for so long. I poured my heart out to him, telling him how much I loved him and how much our marriage meant to me. But it was like talking to a brick wall. Philip was resolute in his decision, adamant that he wanted to be with Jennifer. Then he dropped another bombshell on me. He told me that Jennifer was pregnant and that he wanted to raise a baby with her. That was the final blow. At that moment, I knew that there was no going back. I couldn't compete with a baby. It was clear that Philip had made up his mind, and I had no choice but to let him go. It was one of the hardest decisions I have ever had to make. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, to refuse to let him walk away without a fight. But another part of me knew that it was time to let go, to accept that our relationship was over, and to start moving on with my life. So with a heavy heart, I made the painful decision to let him go. I watched as he walked out the door, knowing that it would be the last time that I would ever see him as my husband. It was like a piece of me died that day, but I knew that it was the only way forward. After Philip left, those days were some of the toughest I've ever faced. I felt like I was drowning in sadness and despair, struggling to make sense of everything that had happened. Depression hit me hard, like a tidal wave crashing over me, leaving me gasping for air. But even in the darkest moments, I knew I had to keep going for my daughter, Rosalie, 19 female, if nothing else. At first, it felt like we were just going through the motions, putting one foot in front of the other without really knowing where I was headed. But slowly, I started to find my footing again. I realized that I couldn't let Philip's betrayal define me or dictate my future. I had to take control of my life and find a way to move forward, no matter how difficult it seemed. The first step was accepting the reality of our situation and filing for divorce. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for both my emotional and mental well-being. I couldn't keep holding on to a marriage that had already crumbled beyond repair. Letting go was painful, but it was also liberating in a way, freeing me from the chains of a failed relationship. Once the divorce was finalized, I threw myself into my work and my role as a mother. I poured all my energy into building a better life for myself and my daughter. I focused on my career, setting new goals and striving to achieve them. Keeping busy helped me distract me from the pain and gave me a sense of purpose. But I knew that simply burying myself in work wasn't enough. I needed to confront the trust issues that had plagued me ever since Philip's betrayal. So I made the brave decision to seek therapy. It wasn't easy opening up about my deepest fears and insecurities, but it was a crucial step towards healing. In therapy, I learned to recognize and challenge the negative thought patterns that had been holding me back. I discovered healthy coping mechanisms to deal with my emotions and rebuild my self-esteem. And most importantly, I began to trust myself again, knowing that I had the strength and resilience to overcome whatever life threw my way. Slowly but surely, I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I began to let go of the bitterness and resentment that had consumed me for so long, replacing them with forgiveness and compassion. I realized that holding on to anger only weighed me down, while forgiveness set me free. Through it all, my daughter was my biggest source of strength and inspiration. Seeing her smile reminded me that I was not alone, that I had someone depending on me to be strong and resilient. She gave me the motivation to keep pushing forward, even when the road ahead seemed daunting. As angry as I was at Phillip for what he did, I couldn't bear the thought of my daughter growing up without her dad in her life. So despite my own feelings, we agreed on joint custody. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right thing to do for Rosalie. However, I made it clear from the start that I didn't want any contact with Phillip or Jennifer. Their betrayal was still too raw for me to stomach, and I couldn't bring myself to be around them, especially not with their new baby in the picture. Rosalie would spend a few weekends at their place as part of our custody agreement, but as time went on and they welcomed their new baby, those visits became less frequent. It wasn't just me who felt uncomfortable with the situation. Rosalie didn't seem to enjoy going there either. I didn't want to force her to spend time in an environment that made her feel uncomfortable, so I stopped pushing for her to visit Phillip and Jennifer. Surprisingly, Phillip never bothered to ask why Rosalie wasn't coming over as often. It was as if he had moved on completely, leaving us behind without a second thought. As much as I tried to shield Rosalie from the fallout of our broken family, I knew that she could sense the tension and the hurt that lingered beneath the surface. But she was resilient, and she never let it dampen her spirits. Instead, she focused on the moments that we shared together, cherishing our time as mother and daughter. Despite the challenges we faced, Rosalie and I grew closer than ever before. We found solace in each other's company, leaning on one another for support and strength. And through it all, I made sure to remind her that she was loved and cherished, no matter what. Fast forward to today, and my life looks completely different from that tumultuous days of my past. I've come a long way since the pain and heartache of my divorce from Phillip. These days, I find myself in a much happier place, both professionally and personally. In terms of my career, I've been able to carve out a successful path for myself. Through hard work and determination, I've climbed the ranks and now hold a position that I am proud of. It hasn't always been easy, but I've never been one to back down from a challenge. I've poured my heart and my soul into my work, and it's paid off in more ways than one. On the personal front, I've found love again, this time with a wonderful man who cherishes and respects me in ways that I never thought possible. We've been married for over 2 years now, and every day I'm grateful for the love and happiness he brings into my life. He's been my rock through the ups and downs, supporting me in ways I never knew I needed. As for Phillip and Jennifer, I've heard through the grapevine that they're doing fine. It's been years since our paths crossed, and I've made a conscious effort to keep my distance. But from what I gathered, they seem to have moved on with their lives, building a family together with their daughter Sarah. Now that my daughter is in college, I was looking forward to a mother-daughter trip to Europe. From the moment she was born, I dreamed of the day that we would embark on this adventure together. And now that she was in college, the timing seemed perfect. We had both been counting down the days until her semester ended, eagerly awaiting the start of our European escapade. I had meticulously planned every detail of our trip, from the cities we would visit to the sights we would see. We were going to explore the historic streets of Rome, stroll along the romantic canals of Venice, and marvel at the majestic beauty of Paris. It was going to be a journey filled with unforgettable experiences and cherished memories. I could see the excitement in Rosalie's eyes as we talked about our upcoming adventure. She couldn't wait to immerse herself in new cultures, taste exotic foods, and create memories that would last a lifetime. We spent hours poring over travel guides and maps, envisioning all the incredible places we would discover together. As the departure date drew closer, our excitement only grew. We counted down the days on our calendar, marking each one with eager anticipation. I had saved up for this trip for years, setting aside a portion of my income every month to ensure we would have a comfortable and enjoyable experience. I wanted this trip to be more than just a vacation. I wanted it to be a bonding experience for Rosalie and me. It was a chance for us to reconnect and strengthen our mother-daughter bond in a new and exciting setting. I couldn't wait to share this adventure with her and create memories that would last a lifetime. However, about a week ago, Rosalie visited her dad for the weekend. While she was there, she must have talked about the trip, and Philip's new daughter Sarah heard all about it. I don't know exactly what happened, but I got a call from Phillip. When I saw Philip's name flash on my phone screen, I felt a mix of emotions: worry, confusion, and a tinge of apprehension. We didn't exactly have a habit of chatting on the phone, so his call caught me off guard. I couldn't help but wonder what had prompted him to reach out. As I answered the call, my mind raced with questions. Was Rosalie okay? Did something happen during her visit? But before I could even utter a word, Philip launched into an unexpected request. He mentioned how Rosalie had excitedly talked about our planned trip during her weekend visit. Then, out of the blue, he suggested that I should also take his daughter Sarah along with us on our journey. I was stunned, to say the least. The audacity of his request left me speechless. Here he was, barely involved in Rosalie's life, and now he had the nerve to suggest that I include his daughter in our mother-daughter trip. It felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of all the ways he had failed to prioritize his role as a father. I struggled to find the right words to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out in anger, to tell him exactly what I thought of his outrageous request. But another part of me knew that stooping to his level wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I took a deep breath and calmly explained to Philip why his suggestion was completely unreasonable. I reminded him that our trip was something I had meticulously planned for Rosalie and me, a chance for us to bond and create memories together. It wasn't about accommodating his last-minute whims or catering to his desire to play the doting father. Philip's insistence on involving his daughter in our carefully planned mother-daughter trip left me feeling frustrated and annoyed. As I stood my ground, reiterating that the trip was meant for Rosalie and me, Philip's frustration seemed to boil over. He accused me of being selfish and insensitive to Sarah's desires, claiming that I was withholding a valuable experience from his daughter. But I refused to back down, reminding him that it was not my responsibility to cater to his last-minute requests or worry about Sarah's financial situation. Despite my attempts to calmly explain my position, Philip's anger only seemed to escalate. He lashed out, calling me names and accusing me of being heartless. But I refused to let his insults affect me, maintaining my composure and standing firm in my decision. I tried to reason with him, emphasizing that the trip was about fostering a deeper bond between Rosalie and me, not accommodating his sudden desire to play the doting father. I pointed out that I barely knew Sarah, and that it wouldn't be fair to either of us to force a relationship under these circumstances. But Philip seemed unwilling to see reason. He continued to berate me, insisting that I was depriving his daughter of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I refused to stoop to his level. In the end, I had to end the call, unable to tolerate any more of Philip's unfounded accusations and insults. When Rosalie returned from her weekend at her father's, she seemed troubled. She sat me down and hesitantly shared that Sarah, her half-sister, had been crying a lot during her visit. Rosalie's heart went out to her, and she expressed her concern for Sarah's well-being. Despite my own reservations about including Sarah on our mother-daughter trip, I couldn't help but admire Rosalie's compassion and empathy. It was clear that she genuinely cared about her half-sister's happiness, and I couldn't fault her for that. So when Rosalie asked me if it would be okay for Sarah to join us on our trip, I felt torn. On one hand, I wanted to honor Rosalie's kind gesture and support her desire to help her sister. But on the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that our trip was meant to be a special bonding experience just for the two of us. It took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. I wanted to make sure that my decision reflected both my love for Rosalie and my commitment to our mother-daughter relationship. After all, our trip was one we had been looking forward for so long, and I didn't want anything to overshadow that. But in the end, I decided that it would be okay to include Sarah. She was a little girl who didn't do anything wrong to me. The situation with Philip and his daughter Sarah became even more complicated after Rosalie's heartfelt request. I wanted to support Rosalie's kindness, so I made the decision to extend an invitation to Sarah to join us on our trip. But when I reached out to Philip to discuss the arrangements, things took a turn for the worse. I offered to cover Sarah's expenses for the trip and suggested that Philip could repay me at a later date. However, Philip didn't take kindly to my proposal. Instead of appreciating the gesture, he accused me of ulterior motives and refused to cooperate. He even went as far as to hurl insults at me and threatened to sever ties with Rosalie. I was taken aback by Philip's reaction. Disowning Rosalie felt like a low blow, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility for the situation. It was one thing for Phillip to be upset with me, but punishing Rosalie for my decision was completely unjustified. In the aftermath of the heated exchange, I couldn't help but question whether I had made the right choice. Was I wrong to refuse to pay for Sarah's trip? Was I being selfish or unreasonable in my decision? So, am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my ex-husband's daughter Sarah to come to Europe with me and my daughter? The whole situation with Phillip had me boiling with anger, especially seeing how upset Rosalie was when I told her what had happened. My heart broke out seeing her in tears, desperately trying to reach out to her dad for some explanation or reassurance, only to be met with silence. Fed up with Phillip's behavior, I decided to take matters into my own hands. After visiting Rosalie at college and failing to reach Phillip by phone, I drove straight to his house, feeling a surge of determination coursing through me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for my daughter and making sure she got the support and love she deserved. When Phillip opened the door, I could barely contain my rage. It took every ounce of self-control not to let my emotions get the best of me. I confronted him, letting out all the frustration and disappointment that had been building up inside me. I told him exactly what I thought of his actions, how he had let down his own daughter by refusing to support her in her time of need. I didn't hold back, laying into him with every word, hoping to shake some sense into him. But just as I was about to unleash another barrage of angry words, Jennifer appeared at the door, looking confused and concerned. She had no idea what had transpired between Phillip and me, and it quickly became clear that she was in the dark about the whole situation. At that moment, I realized that I had let my anger get the best of me. I had assumed that Phillip had filled Jennifer in on our conversation, but it seemed that he had kept her in the dark. Jennifer quickly diffused the tension, promising to sort things out and make things right. Despite my lingering frustration, I knew that it was best to leave things in her hands for the time being. After the tense confrontation with Phillip and Jennifer, I returned home feeling emotionally drained and unsure of what would happen next. But just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more complicated, I received a call from Phillip a few hours later. To my surprise, Phillip expressed a willingness to discuss a repayment plan for Sarah's trip expenses. It was a small victory, but I knew there was still a long way to go in repairing the rift that had formed between us. However, I wasn't about to let Phillip off the hook that easily. Before agreeing to anything, I made it clear that he needed to apologize to Rosalie for his hurtful actions. I wanted him to understand the impact of his words and to take responsibility for his behavior. Phillip seemed frustrated by my insistence, but he didn't argue with me. He knew that he had crossed the line, and now he had to face the consequences of his actions. From what Rosalie later told me, Phillip did eventually call her and apologize. He admitted that his anger had clouded his judgment and reassured her that he loved her and would never abandon her. But Rosalie, ever the mature one, wasn't ready to forgive and forget so easily. She told him that while she appreciated his apology, the damage had been done and she needed some time to process everything. In the meantime, Rosalie focused on preparing for her exams, determined not to let the family drama distract her from her studies. She was wise beyond her years, and I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride in my daughter's resilience and strength. As for Phillip and me, we eventually sat down and worked out a repayment plan for Sarah's trip expenses. It wasn't an ideal situation, but it was a step in the right direction towards rebuilding trust and communication between us. And in a surprising turn of events, Sarah will now be joining us on our mother-daughter trip. Phillip agreed to cover a portion of the expenses as part of our repayment plan, and the rest later in installments. As we finalized the details of Sarah's participation in our trip, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. Despite the challenges we had faced, it seemed that we were finally on the path towards reconciliation and healing. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I last checked in, but I have some updates to share with you all. First off, let me tell you about the incredible trip Rosalie, Sarah, and I had. We explored breathtaking cities, indulged in delicious food, and created memories that will last a lifetime. But that's not the main story I wanted to share with you today. When we returned from our trip, I was taken aback to learn that Phillip and Jennifer were going through a divorce. It came as a surprise, but then again, perhaps not entirely unexpected, given the tension that I had sensed between them during our previous encounter. It turns out that Phillip had been unfaithful. and Jennifer had discovered his infidelity right in their own home. As I processed the news, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, there was a part of me that felt a sense of vindication. After all the pain and heartache that Phillip had caused, it seemed like karma had finally caught up with him. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for Sarah. She was just a young girl, not much older than Rosalie was when Phillip left us, and now she was caught in the crossfire of her parents' failing marriage. Despite the complexities of the situation, Jennifer surprised me by reaching out. She called me to explain the situation and to reassure me that she would be taking responsibility for the repayments for Sarah's trip. I was taken aback by her generosity, but I assured her that there was no rush and that she could take her time. She was still thinking of Sarah's well-being and trying to make things right, even though her own life was wrecked at the moment. It made me realize that perhaps there was hope for a fresh start for all of us, despite the rocky road we had traveled to get here. Hey everyone, it's been a few days since my last update, and I've got some interesting news to share with you all. So here's what's been happening in my world lately. The other day, I had a chance encounter with Jennifer at the grocery store. It was totally unexpected, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And before we knew it, we had agreed to grab lunch together. Over lunch, Jennifer opened up to me about what had happened all those years ago with Phillip. She admitted that she had been completely unaware of our marriage when she got involved with him. Phillip had spun a web of lies, telling her that we were separated and only living together for financial reasons. It wasn't until she became pregnant that she discovered the truth. As Jennifer shared her side of the story, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empathy towards her. While I couldn't forgive her for her role in the situation, I understood how she had been deceived by Phillip's lies, and in that moment, I realized that holding on to anger and resentment would only weigh me down. So I made the decision to let go of the past and move forward with an open heart. As for Rosalie and Sarah, they're both doing surprisingly well given the circumstances. Rosalie is back at college, fully immersed in her studies and extracurricular activities. She's handling everything with maturity and grace, just like I knew she would. Not sure if there will be any more updates. Thank you all for your support and kind words. That was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash the like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again. We'll be seeing you in the next one.